During this chapter, we will discuss our social and personal development in early adulthood. You will see of the different responsibilities that may be brand new to us and how our previous stages and upbringing contributes to who you and I are as adults. According to Erickson, if we established a good background with autonomy and trust and initiative and industrious, then we are likely to enjoy intimacy. And by intimacy, we're talking about a strong connection, affectionate relationship, without necessarily losing one's own self of who we are. The argument that is seen sometimes is that there's been people that say, when somebody has a new girlfriend or a boyfriend because they change the way they dress, they change the way they act, they may even change their hairstyle. And that is someone who may be attempting to be accepted by becoming somebody else, by embracing somebody else. Now, intimacy cannot be experienced if you're not being true to yourself. You can only have intimacy with those who are true to themselves. And in order for that, according to Erickson, we must have an identity in place. We also find that this strongly depends on a good resolution of the identity that we have acquired from early and high school days. So with no identity, it is really difficult to have any intimacy. This strong point here, or this benefit of having this, would allow us to enhance the quality of our relationships, having better communication with our partners, and also a stronger self-esteem and knowing that we're worth something. Those who are going through emerging adulthood often go through a period from late teens to 20s that allows us to explore options without necessarily committing to adult roles. This may consist of maybe living with somebody else. This may consist of maybe trying different careers. This may consist of serious relationships. And we find that regardless of whether it's emerging adulthood or straight early adulthood, all these different tasks in 5 domains: academic, friendship, the way we behave in society, our work, and our romantic relationship, they're all one. Researchers have tried to separate them to study them in depth, but we find that the healthiest individual often is able to get these 5 domains here and live in each of them as one person. If there's a lot of splitting between one, meaning if I'm a very different person at work than I am with my friends, if I'm a very different person academically than I am everywhere else, it brings about a lot of stress. And we hope that in our attempt to become more mature, we are able to incorporate all of these into one. The evolutionary theory, as far as making a selection for a romantic partner, basically states that men prefer physically attractive younger women. And that is because they want to be able to have children with them, and they equate attractive women with healthy. Women prefer often men with higher socioeconomic status, especially looking back at times when women were not allowed to work. They needed a male to guarantee that they would be able to provide for them. So this, however, has been tested in recent times, and we find that women continue to find pleasure and having a safety net, a financial safety net, if you will. The social role theory basically says that we make mate preferences and based on our adaptations to gender roles. So we find that women who enter the workplace often change their mating preference for some based on the new world. I had a colleague that I've known for a long time, not from this campus, from another place, who told me that earlier in his career, his wife decided to pursue a career in law, and he was supportive of her, but when she went into this new world, she started finding other men attractive, and maybe her own husband not so much, and there were some incidents of infidelity that occurred among them, and he blamed it primarily on her new social circles. And while we do not want to simplify it and say that it was only that, it is definitely not unusual to see that sometimes as we enter new workplaces, new settings, there may be something to that. Assertive mating or homogamy is basically a tendency to mate with someone who has traits that are similar to our own. And based on the social role theory, if I'm an attorney and I'm now dealing with attorneys, and maybe my partner, my wife, is not an attorney, then I may want to, just based on homogamy, want to feel more fulfilled and more satisfied with someone who is similar to me. The average age of marriage in the 1970s was 21. Now, if a person were to tell us they want to get married at the age of 21, we would probably advise them to wait. We now have early 21st century men marrying at the age of 27 and women at the age of 25. This is believed to be due based on the emerging adulthood. Married adults, for the most part, report being happier and healthier. They often live longer and have lower rates of variety of psychiatric problems than do adults without committed partners. And this is something that's interesting to see, and this is based on those who have gone the distance. So it's important to know that this is based on rates of individuals who have stayed married longer than 10 years. The divorce rates, we find that we do have a 50% rate, but that is a rate that represents marriages that occurred during the 1970s. In fact, marriages that occurred after that, 1980s through early 2000s, they actually have 1/3 a divorce rate, so about 33% before the 10th anniversary. And the reason why is because the 10th anniversary seems to mark a milestone that has given both partners an equal opportunity to get to know each other, to adjust and adapt to their new life. Oftentimes, divorces occur during the first 10 years of our lives, and this is associated with increases in physical and emotional illness. And there's a lot of stress behind this, and sadly, women are often more affected than men financially as well as emotionally. Women often sustain an average decline of 40 to 50% household income, whereas a male may improve their economic position. And that's why there are laws and programs like child support that often are used by women, because before, women did not have rights. So in an attempt to make it a more even playing ground for everyone, including children, it is important to empower both members in a marriage. Parenthood, for the most part, the majority of young adults say they would like to become parents, and we have seen that the average age at which they're becoming parents in the United States has gone up as well. And it's important to note that oftentimes parents or parenting alone will leave little or less time for conversation with their partners. Sex will not be as spontaneous as it may have been before, and there's even sometimes a decline in after childbirth, marital satisfaction. That is, there is a decrease in marital with their peers after childbirth, and it's important to marry someone who has a maturity to understand that it's not something personal, but it's part of the process. We often hear of movies and stories where a guy felt that he was not taken care of at home, so he'll go look for some type of satisfaction elsewhere, and that is spelling out trouble. It's important for us to know that as we become parents, it's a partnership that will require sacrifices, and selfishness is not something that will get us there. Parenting is a selfless job, and it requires that there be commitment from both partners. Those who have no children often report less marital satisfaction fluctuation. Not to say that there's no dissatisfaction, it's just that the fluctuation, it won't be as severe. With individuals who they have children, oftentimes their satisfaction could be here, and with children there will be a decline. Well, with with couples that are childless, you would have the decline maybe a little bit like this. So it won't be as drastic, but there is a fluctuation. It's a marriage nonetheless, to flawed adults who are trying to make ends meet. The family, most young adults improve their relationship with their parents and siblings. And we actually have noted that the ethnicity has a lot to do with it. We find that Hispanic Americans often value family ties more than any other ethnic group. And it's important for us to consider that as we maybe consider getting married or giving therapy to individuals. As one of my also colleagues in Chicago was telling me that when she married her husband from Guatemala and she met his family, they wanted to do everything together. She said, we visited them and they wanted to go to the store. She said, initially I thought it was going to be a trip somewhere to an archaeological place. She said it was just to the store to buy some stuff, but they wanted to do everything together. And she said, I wasn't sure I liked that. And that's an ethnicity component. For him, it was important to be there. For her, not so much, but important, again, compromise. When it comes down to employment, the role of the worker, find is that most young people will need to take on this role. Unless you are wealthy and you inherit that, even then, you may need to work. And we find that satisfying work is related to good mental health and life satisfaction. If you love your occupation, you love your job, we find that they're less likely to be burnout, less likely to also be divorced. Job satisfaction is oftentimes the lowest at mid-career. So usually, thankfully, by the end of the early adulthood period, we seem to bounce back up. But the representation of mothers with children under the age of 6 in the workplace has also gone up. And with that, we look into the double shift, which sometimes consists of a mother feeling overwhelmed and burned out because she goes to work and then comes home to work again. Whereas men, for the most part, have a traditional role of I went to work and now I'm home and I need to be taken care of. So important for us to see how marital satisfaction is strongly tied. It has to be adjusted with the way employment has adjusted and changed.